Hi, John. I just want to say how appreciative I am of your participation in these play sessions with Nora. And I absolutely love the way that you all interact with each other. And I'm super impressed with all of the progress you've made from play session 1 in your living room to play session 2. And I think you'll be pretty impressed with the data that I've collected throughout your play sessions, and to see the difference in the data of how you've improved with playing, with doing the parallel play with your daughter. So in play session 1, where you and Nora were using the magnetic blocks to build the towers, I really enjoyed watching the interactions of you praising Nora for how she was handling the animals and the PJ Masks toys, and how she was being safe and respectful to those toys. I also like the questions that you asked Nora, and how informative you wanted to be with what her expectations for the play session was. I thought that was really nice. So from play session 1, here are some of the data that I collected throughout that session while watching you and Nora interact with each other. So there were 3 times where I noticed that you followed directions. So you followed what Nora was telling you to do. When she told you to move the tower over, you moved it over to the spot where she wanted it. There were 5 times where you answered a question that Nora had asked you. So one time there was a point where she was asking about I lost my train of thought. She was asking you a specific question about something that had happened, and you gave her that answer of why it was the way that it was. There were 4 times when you repeated a statement that Nora said. So there was one time when she, was saying, "No, you're doing that." And you repeated that statement back to her in a playful manner. There was 5 times where you noticed her behavior. So you complimented, or you made a statement about what she was doing in a way that it was just you noticing what she was doing. So you noticed that she was, putting her animals in that spot. There were 3 times that I could hear you make an exclamation. So there was one time that she, put the blocks together in a certain way, and you're like, "Oh, cool!" Using those types of exclamation words to praise what she was doing. There were 6 times where you asked an information question. So these questions we think of as providing a helpful way for us to play with our child. And so you did that 6 times where you were asking her, how she wanted you to build the tower, and what she wanted you to use. And why she was doing what she was doing. You wanted those information questions to help you better play with her. And there were 3 times where you provided her praise. There was one time that you specifically told her that you were giving her praise for how you loved how she was playing safely and being respectful to the animals as she was putting them away into their house that she had built them. There were 5 times where you asked a directive question. So, directive questions are really just those questions where you're, saying, "Well, why don't we do this?" And, instead of telling her, that you would rather do something else, you were kind of guiding her, to that process through using questions. And so I noticed 5 times of that type of questioning. There were 7 times where I noticed that you gave her a directive of, "Well, why don't we, let's use this," or, "I'm going to use the triangle blocks. You use the bigger blocks. Those type of statements. I didn't see any time where you had to reprimand her and say no to something that she was doing. In the moment where she was moving the bowl off the table, that could have been a moment where we possibly could have seen a reprimand, but instead you used a guiding question of, why don't you hand that to me? So that way she could, give you that bowl and you could move it, instead of telling her to no, not do that. So that was for your first play session. In your second play session, I could see immediately a huge difference in how you interacted with her. There were so much more of you thoughtfully engaging with her and the process that she wanted you to take to play with those building blocks, as you were building hotels. And I saw that was one thing that we really wanted to work on from play session 1, is to provide more of the playful behavior where you're following Nora's lead instead of gathering information to do something similar to what she was doing. And so for following directions this time in data, there were 12 times where you followed what Nora had told you to do, or you followed what Nora was saying. So whenever she was building the hotel and it had the 6 blocks around the walls, she then in that moment said, oh, we need to rethink it. And so she moved her 2 blocks off of an outer wall, and you followed doing the same. There was one time where you answered a question. So at the beginning of the play session, Nora was telling you that, you all were going to build hotels. And then she started telling you about, the one time that she was 4 and went to a hotel. And you answered that question by saying, oh, you're still 4, so we haven't gone to a hotel, so I don't remember it. There were 4 times where you repeated a statement that she had said. And so, there were 3 times where you noticed her behavior, and you, as she was building the hotel, she was building her hotel, you were building yours, and then she put them together, and you noticed that it was a really cool design. It looked really good. There were 4 times where you provided an exclamation. So, you said it was really cool. You said, oh, wow, several times. There were 11 times where you asked an information question. So again, we're still heavy in that spot where we're trying to gather information of how she wants the play session to go. So whenever she would do something to her hotel, you would ask a question to see if she wanted you to do the same thing to your hotel, or how she imagined your hotel looking too throughout the play session. There weren't any times where you provided explicit praise, other than the exclamations. There were no times where you asked a directive question. So you didn't say, why don't we do this instead? You followed her lead, and you provided that more playful behavior this time. There was one time at the end of the play session where Nora had gotten in front of the camera. So you did give her a directive of, let's move over here. So that was good. It was that one directive. And again, you didn't provide any reprimands. You didn't tell her no to something that she was doing. So I really enjoyed your play session. It was very beneficial to watch, and I think you made great progress. I hope to see that you continue with that progress and continuing that playful parallel parent play, and keep up the great work.